And purchase. Yes, hello. You've caught me grabbing a Roomba at an absolute bargain price. No more vacuuming for Rob ever again.
It's a great feeling when you find those clever tricks and life hacks to get around those things you really don't want to do. A bit like when you find secret ways to beat bosses in video games without actually fighting them.
Now, don't get me wrong, I love boss fights, but sometimes I just want an easy ride.
And that's why I love these alternative strategies for besting bosses without having to raise my virtual fists. They let me be lazy and are usually way more interesting than winning the fight the normal way.
So, here are 7 bosses we beat without throwing a single punch.
Delivery.
Oh, it's here. Excellent. I mean, I got this from definitely not counterfeitproducts.com. You'd think that would be reliable, wouldn't you?
Speaking of parcels, they're essential for taking down Quiet in Metal Gear Solid 5, the first boss we beat without throwing a single punch. Traditionally, this fight is an epic sniper duel reminiscent of a war film, requiring players to have the perception and reflexes of a bird of prey, especially on extreme difficulty.
But when I do it, it's slightly less dramatic. Special delivery.
This is such a good example of the alternative boss strategy that if you look the phrase up in the gamer's dictionary, it's just a screenshot of Quiet's disappointed face as she realises how the shame of losing a fight to a cardboard box is going to follow her around for the rest of her life. It's so wonderfully MGS5 though, using an existing mechanic in a creative way, something that the game constantly encourages you to do.
Even if I just tranquilise everyone and extract them.
What I particularly love about this tactic is that it's so Kojima. Here's a man that's played around with the conventions of boss fights his entire career, and yet still, decades on, manages to craft memorable encounters you can overcome in inventive ways.
You've always got to think outside the box with Metal Gear Solid, or in this case, on the box. Dropping the box on Quiet's head, who's under the box. The box!
The next boss we beat without throwing a single punch is Ariel, the first boss from Undertale. To be fair, you could pick any boss from Undertale, given that the game's whole thing is about letting players choose how they approach the game, be neutral, be a pacifist, or be a genocidal monster. And while being a pacifist also involves skill checks and offers its own unique challenge, it still feels like less work than killing.
And feeling like I'm doing work is precisely what I am trying to avoid.
Hold on. The only reason you don't murder people is because it feels like hard work.
Okay, self-incrimination avoided. At least in Undertale, I can't confess to anything because all I could be guilty of is being drawn into a fight I have no desire to take part in the first place, let alone win. After all, choosing not to fight Ariel is as much a way to beat them as besting them in physical combat. If anything, it makes me feel even more smug and morally superior.
Which is something I really enjoy. Superior, yes.
So off I go, avoiding Ariel's attacks and refusing to offer any in return, leaving her no choice but to shuffle off with her head hung low. Look at that, so guilt-ridden she can barely look me in the eye.
For shame, Ariel. For shame.
Boss we beat without punching once, number 3, is the Monkey King from Split Fiction, a boss you defeat not by throwing hands, but throwing down some sick moves on the dance floor.
Something I am really good at in real life as well. Look at this.
Please stop.
After the incredibly varied mixture of boss battles Split Fiction has thrown at you by this point, Big Hammer Man, Spherical Traffic Police, Tron Hologram, Bullet Hell Train, this is a really lovely change of pace. No laser attacks to dodge, no high stakes life or death scenario, just a chill ape who wants to share the tools of the tango. And it's all accompanied by an infectiously groovy soundtrack that would make even the most stubborn of dance haters tap their feet.
Rob, please.
It might not be as outlandish as some of the entries on this list, but you've got to admit there aren't many bosses who just want you to have a good time.
And we're having a good time, aren't we, Connor?
Entry number 4 is the Sorrow, another boss from Metal Gear Solid we defeated without throwing a single punch. You might think the obvious example from Snake Eater would be either the end or feeding the fear rotten food, but they don't quite fit for me because they either require you to throw a punch or a bullet or some food.
With the Sorrow, sorry, I'm out of breath from last entry. The only way to win is by not throwing a punch.
Instead, you'll be desperately trying to figure out how to best him while dodging the ghostly apparitions of all the enemies you've killed so far. The only way you can escape the clutches of the psychic and his haunting afterlife swamp is to die, which means either letting his white light kill you or voluntarily drowning yourself.
Why wouldn't you think to do that?
And then taking the revive pill, bringing you back from the brink and releasing you from the sorrow's melancholy grasp. Which might sound confusing, but it makes sense when you're in it. More importantly, this whole battle of the minds happens without Snake so much as using the knockout handkerchief, so it's entirely non-lethal. Something I can't say for these guys.
You're not a boss though, are you, mate? Nobody cares.
Up next is Ollie Bulb from Cuphead, a cute onion with some nasty vegetable friends, and the number 5 spot on this list. Mr. Bulb is part of the Root Pack, the first boss stage in the game that also features fellow foodstuffs Chauncey Chauntenay and Sal Spudder.
Cuphead is so stylish it even makes vegetables cool.
But the special thing about Ollie Bulb is that despite his aggressive friends, you don't actually have to lift a finger against him, something that is unusual in a world where everything else anthropomorphized wants to kill you. You still have to punish the potato, but you can spare Ollie from the chop by just leaving him be. He even gives you an adorable little smile to say thanks.
Oh, Luke, how could I ever hurt you?
Unfortunately, refusing to battle Mr. Bulb does come at a price, namely the ire of the secret 4th member of the Root Pack, Horace Radish, who will join the capricious Carrots offensive as punishment for letting Ollie go.
And with friends like that, who needs enemies?
Anyway, what's important is that the Root Pack is dead, with the exception of Monsieur Bulb, who lives to be sautéed another day, all thanks to me beating him without throwing a single punch.
Such a lovely ending. I think I've actually got tears in my eyes. It's probably just the onions.
The 6th boss we beat without throwing a single punch is Dr. Loatoto from Psychonauts, a game where you play as a wannabe child soldier in a psychic training camp.
When you put it like that, it seems a lot more sinister.
You can't actually fight the pepper grinder wielding dentist at all, and instead have to rely on telekinetic mischief to put him in his rightful place, out the window by way of a tank. After the lobotomy-loving doctor threatens to turn Shigor's beloved turtle Mr. Pokelope, you jump to his aid by luring him out with birthday cake, then whisking him to safety in your pocket.
That's right, baby. Daddy's here.
Well, I wasn't expecting him to sound like that.
After convincing Shigor to fight back against her cruel master, she takes out Mr. Pokelope's brain and pops it back in the lab so you can pop him into the nearby mind control tank. Then it's time to stand back and watch the fireworks. No punches, just a puzzle that leads to you lobotomizing a turtle before thrusting them into a literal war machine. But you don't pull the trigger, so that makes it okay.
This game is so much more problematic than I remember.
The final course on this menu of bosses we beat without throwing a single punch is more of a cheese board than a dessert. Because Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the deepest RPGs PlayStation has ever seen, you can beat pretty much any boss you come across without directly attacking them. And because there are so many bosses, the only real limit to how you can beat them without throwing a punch is your own creativity.
I particularly enjoyed educating bosses about gravity by gently encouraging them to fall off a cliff.
But let's be real, the best way to beat any boss is to have them beat themselves. So the final entry has to be Yergear. If you can get this fiend to serenade you the details of his contract with Raphael and pass a hidden insight check, you will notice some loopholes to help you breeze through the fight without lifting a finger, if you can pass the persuasion checks, that is.
Thank God for save scumming.
First, you persuade him to kill his minions, then his tentacled kitty cat, and finally himself, freeing him from his obligation to the Devil's Heir and freeing you from having to take on the slab of pointy red meat yourself.
All's well that ends well, I think.
Well, there you have it, 7 bosses we beat without throwing a single punch. If you enjoyed this video, then get your friends to like it for us. Make sure to dictate your comments down below and use your psychic powers to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all things PlayStation, including more videos like this every Friday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
There's a happy man there, loving his job. We've come up to film. Yeah. Connor loves his job. Right, that's a wrap. That's a wrap.
PlayStation